I promise I'm not crazy, officer. How mental health is affecting our society. Today with Captain Ed Potter.
We believe in all the F words: faith, family, football, and fitness. Check us out on the Richard Neese podcast every Saturday morning on WKUL.
Please subscribe. Please help us out by growing the channel. We want to help good people get to a better place. Hey everybody, Richard Neese here. Thank you guys so much for tuning in to the Richard Neese podcast. I'm really excited today because not only do I have Dominic Gill
off screen.
Yeah, you can't see him right now. We have Dom. We also have our first guest for the Richard Neese podcast, Captain Ed Potter. Ed, thank you for coming on.
I'm happy to be here.
Absolutely. So Captain Potter, Captain as I refer to him, Ed Potter, he has been a mentor of mine for a long time. He was my first supervisor as the warden at the sheriff's office here in Coleman County a long time ago when I was a little pup. And I'm thankful for his leadership and his guidance, not only in the law enforcement field, but in a lot of other ways too. He's taught me a lot about mental health. He's taught me a lot about society, a lot about compassion, so many things. And I'm excited to have him on today. Captain, do you want to kind of give an intro of who you are, where you came from? We're going to get into the heavy stuff, but we want to find out what made the man, the environment, if that makes sense.
Well, I think what really made me who I am today is because I grew up in poverty. You know, I grew up in West Virginia up till about the age of 6. We had no running water. We had an outhouse. We cooked on a wooden stove, and we took a bath in a number 10 tub. And so I think that's really where my passion for people came from.
So you started out there. I know you and I have had this conversation several times. Back then, Dad, Mom, basically you guys were looking for work. You were looking for employment. And I think that you'd moved to, was it Texas for a little while?
Yeah, well, we moved to Texas for about a year, and I was 6 years old then. And but I had meningitis. And so I had to miss, when I was in West Virginia, I missed a whole year of school. And so we lived a year in Texas. And then we moved back to West Virginia.
And then bounced around. Was it to South Carolina after that?
Yeah, and that's kind of where I grew up. I grew up in Conway, South Carolina, just outside of Myrtle Beach.
Okay.
And I worked in agriculture as a kid. I cropped tobacco.
Yeah.
Drove a tractor and all that kind of stuff.
So you talk about poverty, and obviously that is going to be, there's a basic poverty line that people talk about, that you make X amount of dollars. Poverty here, poverty in Africa, poverty in different places are different, but a little bit more on the living conditions. Where you were showing me pictures of the school that you went to in elementary and things like that. I guess that was before or after West Virginia?
That was in West Virginia.
Okay. Kind of a small school.
Yes.
20, 30 kids, 100 kids. I mean, what were you looking at?
Probably back then around 70-some kids probably.
And that would be elementary school. So K through 6,
yeah,
something like that.
6.
And then what about the employment around that area? Was it coal mines? I mean, that's the traditional thought process when you talk about it.
It is coal mines. And, you know, West Virginia is a beautiful place.
Sure.
But as far as jobs and things like that, it's just not there.
So John Denver lied.
Yes.
I was expecting to hear hear about all the heavenly things about it, for being almost there.
It's beautiful. It's a beautiful place to, if you can afford it and stuff. So it is a beautiful place.
Right.
But as far as economic situations, it's kind of bad.
Okay. And then I know you moved to South Carolina. You grew up most of the time in South Carolina. Is that right?
Yes.
And then kind of tell me what your first experiences were as far as the working world.
Well, my first experience was I didn't have a trade because I was only in the 10th grade.
Right.
My mom shot and killed my dad. So I got out and got a job, and I wasn't a welder. So I went to this company, and they says, hey, we'll train you. We'll give you 40 hours of training. So I did, and so I messed up on the weld. And this was on a Thursday. I told my mom, I says, I'm not going back.
Right.
And she says, well, if you don't go back, how you know? And so I went back the next day, and I passed the test.
Nice.
So I got the job.
Yeah.
So I was there for 10 years and a make supervisor, and we built hydraulic cranes called Grove Manufacturing. And so I worked there for 10 years.
So one of the cool things about guys like you, Captain, is that it seems like you've lived 4 or 5 lives. And I'm not saying that because of your age. I'm saying that because of the experience that you have. You've had, we haven't even gotten into law enforcement yet. A lot of guys are looking and they're like, oh, 10 years in one field. They barely spend 2 or 3 years in that. So it's really cool to hear that piece. we're going to dig back into what you talked about as far as your familiar. You kind of breeze through the mom and dad issue, and I think that's a lot of the foundation of what you do on a daily basis with domestic violence, especially the sheriff's office, mental health. They all kind of tie in. It's always interesting to kind of break down our past experiences to understand who we are and why we do the things we do. Last week, Dominic and I were talking about a book, Wild at Heart and Way of the Wild Heart, and that talks about how our parental influences affected us. I think that would be the same for you. I know we had talked about that in our weekly session when we go to the Waffle House and solve all the world's problems, right?
Right.
So I think that's interesting. And then, so you're working, and did that it make you end up in Birmingham with the welding? Is that what happened?
No. I worked there, and we got laid off. So this company was really huge, and so I went to Mississippi for a year and built Walmart trailers, and so I spent a year in there, came back, worked in a plastic factory. I was supervisor there, and then they were building a new jail, and so that was my opportunity to get into law enforcement, which I've always wanted to be. Sure. And so that opened the door. So in 1988, I started at Horry County Police Department in Conway, South Carolina.
Okay.
And I worked there in the jail for a couple of years. Went to the academy. Hugo come along, and so Chief seen what kind of worker I was. So in 1990, I went to the police academy in South Carolina.
I see.
And I worked there from 88 till 96, and then we moved here. So
what was the driving force in wanting to be in law enforcement?
When I was 12, I would watch that, and I just liked the way they help people.
Sure.
And so that was my inspiration, I guess.
So community policing before community policing was cool, right?
That's right.
Well, you see that, and unfortunately, it seems like a big divide. Locally, we have a lot of folks that support law enforcement, go above and beyond, but nationwide, you can also see that negative side where policing goes too far. You see that all the time on the news. So it's interesting to hear why people get involved in it. It's kind of like, why do you join the military? Well, most people will join during the time of war, and so they want to be involved in that sort of war. Other people join because they want college money or whatever the case might be. So it's always interesting to get a different mix for why you did. Early on, probably what was the biggest influence that you had as a law enforcement officer? Was it chief of police? Was it somebody that you idolized? And what did you see as, I want to be that guy or that girl?
Well, his name's Lieutenant Philip Thompson. He was a lieutenant in our department, and he really impressed me.
Yeah.
And of course, now he's been sheriff in Horry County for about 20 years or more. So
he impressed a lot of people, apparently.
He did. And he's still sheriff today.
Great.
So he impressed me.
Okay.
So I guess that was my driving force.
So was it the demeanor? Was it the matter-of-factness? Was it his ability to do his job but also help people at the same time? I mean, what was
Yes. Well, it was leadership.
Okay.
If something was happening, he was there.
Yeah.
And he was there to talk to people, and he cared about people. And so that's kind of where I guess I got my part from, is that, hey, if something bad was going on, he would show up.
Absolutely.
And so that's the kind of leadership that you want in law enforcement.
Sure. So Dominic and I talk about this a pretty good bit. I believe that most of the failings that we have in society is from men not stepping up and being leaders in whatever capacity that is. And so when we allow the government, when we allow other people to step in those roles that we should be in as men, whether that's in the family, whether that's in the community, whether that's in law enforcement, whatever that might be. And so it's always great to hear those inspirations, those guys that step up and do that in the way that they're called to do. So you've got the law enforcement piece. You spent a few years there, and then what happened after South Carolina?
Well, we moved here, and me and my wife.
Okay. Here's your opportunity to shout out and say, "I love you, Grace. You're wonderful. You're everything."
You just skipped over a whole section of his life.
Well,
This is a different wife, but I came here. We got out of law enforcement for a while, and I told Grace, I says, "Hey, I want to get back into it." So I went to Birmingham, spent a couple of years, and you won't see this in Coleman County. What I learned there,
Sure.
And what I've seen. And then I was police chief of Hansville for a couple of years. Yep. And the mayor at that point in time says, "We're not going to reappoint you."
Sure.
And so Sheriff Roden, Tyler Roden, says, "Hey, don't worry about it. Come up here and get your car when you get ready." And so 2 weeks later, I started here, and I've just finished 20 years here at the sheriff's office.
That's pretty impressive. I think about all of the ways that you contribute to our community and society as a whole, Captain. You left off some. Obviously, it would take probably 2 hours, 3 hours to discuss everything as far as volunteer firefighting and all the other things that you do with the community. So is there anything else you want to flesh out before we kind of dig into some of the other issues?
No, I think that's pretty much it. That's just the basic stuff. So I felt like when I was over the jail, mental illness was a big thing, and I didn't know anything about mental illness. So I went back to school and got a degree in psychology, a master's degree.
Absolutely.
And then I went on to move to make a PhD out of that.
Right.
And I wrote a dissertation and stuff. And then I've got a human services master's, and now I'm working on a mental health counseling degree.
Yeah, you pulled out that list of all the degrees you had, and I think that's longer than my entire resume, just with the degrees that you have. What's interesting, and I always respected, there's two pieces of this. So you went from being a chief of police, obviously you had experience in other areas, chief of police, and then you became the warden in the jail. And as the warden, I saw this on a regular basis. I come in and, I'm a young pup. I want to get out on patrol. I want to do this, and this. But the compassion, but also the firmness and discipline and accountability that you had inside of the jail really impressed me. It wasn't, you expressed humanity. You showed the inmates there that you saw them as people, but also that they were there serving time. So there was boundaries across the board, which I didn't see with a lot of deputies, with a lot of people in different roles there. I saw a lot of people that were there to beat on folks. I saw a lot of people that were there. They were complete, all heart and loving, and didn't have the discipline. What I loved was the mix that you had, which was we love you. We understand the situation you're in, but you're in the situation you're in because of the actions that you took. When there was a certain amount of discipline that needed to be measured out, it was in a measured approach. And also when there was compassion needed, I saw that, and accountability across the board with some of my friends, some of the people I didn't like. But regardless, there was a fairness, whether it was a deputy or whether it was an inmate. Everybody knew where they stood and knew that they would be treated compassionately, but also that they had guidelines they had to follow.
Well, everybody has to have guardrails.
That's right.
Whether it's in your job or what, we've all got guardrails.
Sure.
And, we always answer to somebody in the human world, but then we also have to answer to somebody after.
That's exactly right.
Death.
So we were kind of rolling, and I was going to mention that maybe you should just be the host of the show. The segue that you made from professional into your collegiate degrees and academic world, that was pretty smooth. That's where I was headed to next. So you have these degrees, and what's cool about that is on the academic world, it isn't just to have a degree so I can get a better job. It's so I can do the job that I'm doing better, and so I can be a better human overall, so I can understand myself, my family, the people that I come in contact with, whether that's inmates at the time, and now you do a slightly different role. You want to explain what you do at the Sheriff's Office in Coleman now?
Well, basically, I work with victims of crimes, but I every day pretty much read the reports that come in daily. And if there's something I can help this person with, then I'll make a phone call.
Sure.
If it's Richard Neese, then I'll pick up, Richard, how can I help you? Do you have any questions?
You have to get your paper out and write all this stuff down.
You need to call them. You need what they call.
Make that call. Okay. But sometimes people will come in and sit down and say, my son is on drugs and he's got some mental issues, or what's the process? I'm not a lawyer, so I don't get into the lawyer aspect of it, but I can tell them the process that we have to go through as far as probating somebody in this county.
Sure.
Or most people get a speeding ticket.
Right.
And they pay the ticket. And that's all they have to do with law enforcement. They don't get into the burglaries and the homicides and things like that every day. So we live in the USA, but people don't know the process.
Right.
And every county has a different process. So we have to talk about that.
Right.
And so I just try to give guidance and whatever that may look like.
Sure.
But, if it's the legal aspect of it, then I say, you have to see a lawyer.
Well, the thing that I get to on victim services is, and this isn't always the case, but overwhelmingly you're going to see women that are the victims of domestic abuse or whatever that might be, children, things like that. And what I see is if you have a different deputy in that position, a law enforcement officer who is very stern, not very compassionate, basically they could be dealing with their abuser all over again. Not that that person is that, but the demeanor that they put off is a strong, dominant alpha male. And somebody may not be comfortable with that. A woman that's just been abused may not be comfortable if you don't have the right demeanor, the right way of tact to dealing with folks. What do you see as being one of the tools that you have to be more effective with the victim on that side? I already know, but I'm trying to tee this up for you.
Well, the thing is, I think that, just my demeanor, just start off with it. Ask them what they want, not what I want, or ask them how I can help them. And, I don't wear a regular uniform. I usually wear something more casual, approachable. I say
less aggressive, yes. Right?
And so I'm not the same person that answered the call out to the house and stuff. So they sit down and we'll talk about it. Some cry, some, they have different emotions and stuff. So everybody's a little bit different.
Sure.
Because every domestic is a little bit different. You'll see that, they may be hurt or something like that, but every domestic is not the same.
One thing that I always find very unique, very valuable is that you start the conversation, obviously, with just calling them back. Mm-hmm. How many times have you had people say, I didn't think you'd actually call me? And to me, what I see with that is it establishes consistency and trust automatically. You did what you said you were going to do. You did what you were supposed to do. I'm not just a statistic. I'm not just something to be thrown away, which a lot of these women and men in some cases and kids, that's what they feel like. It's I've been thrown away. I'm not worth anything. My abuser or whatever the situation is has taught me that I'm not worthy. And then just by having a warm voice on the other side, somebody that actually cares, somebody that listens, to me, that's huge in building that trust process.
I agree. And, I have had called people and says, who is this again? And sure, what are you calling about? Well, I'm calling about you. Just want to make sure you're okay. And that, is there anything I can help you with? And they'll ask questions or they'll say, hey, I was thinking about this. What should I qualify for this? Or how much does it cost? Right. Or whatever. And, it doesn't cost them anything to come talk to me and sit down.
What I think is interesting about that too is, so first off, most people, like you said, deal with a speeding ticket and that's about it. But having somebody that will be a liaison and walk them through the process of this is who you need to talk to. It's almost like I think about the CASA. You know what CASA is? So with the court-appointed advocates, it basically is an opportunity for a child to have representation and not the state and not somebody's attorney, but the child is looked after. I see that in a similar way. This is somebody that is not necessarily geared towards, we want to arrest the bad guy. We do this. I'm here to help you transition to whatever you decide is best in your life, which I think is a great transition over to talking about the mental health side. And you and I can kind of spar a little bit on the government's role in enforcing things and the government's role in pushing mental health treatment and things like that. But at the end of the day, it is an epidemic. It's a huge problem. You can blame it on whatever you want, whether that's drugs, whether it's alcohol, whether that's being stuck in front of a screen all the time, or from parenting, whatever it is. But at the end of the day, there are issues with mental health. And I want you to kind of dig into that because I know with you and Grace, that's a passion for you guys, is helping people work through that.
It is. 1 in 5 people have mental problems. And the biggest thing with mental problems is, hey, I don't have a problem. Everybody else has got a problem. So that they look at it from inside out. They don't see a problem.
Sure.
A lot of people think, well, hey, he's just bad to me. She's bad to me or whatever. But that's the problem, is that sometimes they can't make good judgment calls.
Right.
And a lot of people think, well, these people are just drug addicts. Well, how about if we knock off the dirt and let's look underneath?
Sure.
And there's a lot of children in society that are molested or that has bad parenting or something's happened to them in their life. And how many children do you know that knows what to do?
Sure.
Well, if I take this drug or, this made me feel better.
It's an escape.
So escape type thing. And then you figure out, hey, well, this young man's been molested, raped, or something's by somebody or someone. And so we got to look underneath, knock the dirt off the top. Let's forget he's a drug addict because there may be reasons for that.
Right.
For him self-medicating. Instead of just putting that label on somebody that says, hey, he's just a drug addict, he's not worth our time.
Right.
Everyone's worth their time. because they're a human being.
Sure.
And if they're making bad decisions, how can I educate these people to make better decisions? I called the jail, I called it adult timeout.
Right.
And we had different programs. We had Dr. Kolowitz from college come and give us gowns and caps, and we graduated like 27 people with that one year.
Sure.
And she give them like a $2,500.
So if you guys don't know, Dr. Vicki Carol Wicks is the head, I don't know her official title. She's the top lady at Wallace State Community College. Yeah. And so they're working on programs to kind of assimilate these folks that are in the county jail, which is typically less than a year you'll be staying there. Mm-hmm. Sometimes it's longer based off of different things. Ed can go into more details on that. But they're working on programs so that these men and women have the skills to re-enter the workforce, the world, when they get out of jail, instead of just continuing that cycle. So didn't just cut you off.
Well, they got their GED,
right?
And so I call it, like I said, I call it adult timeout. But it also gives people time to think. They're not on the drugs or anything like that. So it's not the best environment, but it gives them time out to say, sure, hey, I want to do something different. Most people age out of crime about age 36. They're tired of going to jail, prison, or whatever. And people would come out of jail and prisons, and they're successful people.
Absolutely.
They're good people.
Yeah.
And, they're good people, but we just dislike their behaviors.
Sure.
Whatever that is. And so we have to look at the person, not the crime or whatever.
Right.
Because they're going to go to prison. They're going to serve their time, but they've done that.
Sure.
So when they get out, let's help them out.
I think there's always a balancing act or an understanding where we're at in society, where you look at the cost of incarceration. You look at the cost of that. You look at the cost of treatment. You look at the cost of not treating and not arresting anybody and what that causes society. You're always looking at where is that balance at. Obviously, if you have some major issues where looting, rioting, raping, this happens, then you're going to have a push towards, let's throw them all in jail. Let's do this. And then the other side is, well, my tax bill's getting higher because I'm having to pay for all these jails. And so, let's stop arresting so many folks. Let's try and rehabilitate and put them back in society. So I don't know that there is a right answer at any given moment for how hard to push. We all have different opinions on that. But I know that with you, Cap, you and I, like I said, we spar a little bit on how much we should do, what should be taxpayers. I'm always going to go back to the churches. I'm going to go back to the churches and the community helping folks like that. But then the other piece is how much government funding is backing, how many philanthropists are paying for these programs. It's always a challenge on that side. So, Captain, what do you see as the future, what we should be pushing towards as far as mental health goes for programs and things like that?
Well, Coleman County does a good job as far as programs, some of the programs that we have, but we need a place to put them. If I took Richard Neese up to the hospital and says, hey, Richard needs some help. If Richard's a homeless person and he goes to the hospital, he may have problems. But when they'll send out a notice to these other mental hospitals. If they don't want to help you, then you're not going to get any help.
Right. So almost a blacklist.
Yes.
That makes sense.
And it's not always that way.
Sure.
But a lot of times it is. If you don't have insurance or something, hey, there's no help for you. I'm sorry. And so we need to change that.
Yeah.
We need more mental hospital beds to where they can stay in there 7 to 14 days and actually get on medication and make a difference instead of, and there are programs out there where you stay and get stabilized.
Right.
But is that what we need? We need to spend our money, and that just comes back to the dollar. We sending all these mental people to the prison. Is that the right place to put them? Why don't we build a mental hospital beside that prison and actually try to help these people instead of just putting them there in danger?
Right.
Because a lot of mental health people may get raped or they're in prison. So why don't we take that tax dollar instead of building bigger prisons? Let's build some mental health hospitals.
Yeah. So I definitely like that. I guess I always come back to this. As an entrepreneur, as a business owner, how can I, in this current world, make a difference in this? And I'm not talking about necessarily contributing to this or that, but if let's say that I had $5 million that I was going to use for programs or whatever that, how would you spend that money, or how can we take an active role as opposed to saying, well, Uncle Sam will do this, so I'm going to vote a certain way. How can we actively help our community in the mental health world?
Well, I think
I'll ask you some easy questions in a minute, right?
Yeah, thank you. But I think education people. If this person don't know what's going on in the community, then how are they going to help you?
Yeah.
So educate the public. Say, hey, look, these is what we need. But Richard and Ed, we're not going to get the senators and the legislative people to do what we want us to do.
Right.
But when you start having the whole community say, hey, we need some attention here. This is my son, this is my daughter, this is my husband, this is my wife, my grandmother, or whatever.
Almost organizing or unionizing where you have a lot of people that are saying the same thing.
Yes, the same voice. Yeah. So we need a voice.
Yeah.
And that doesn't always cost you money.
That's a great segue, Captain. We need a voice. You haven't talked about what you and Grace are doing to be that voice. So I want you to talk. I know you're a humble guy. I want you to talk about the nonprofit that you guys are a part of, what you're trying to do, because it's part of education.
Rachel Turner, she started this nonprofit, and we're trying to get counselors together to have a voice through the counseling people. And so that's the biggest thing, is that we want to educate people.
Yeah.
And we want, it takes money to get some of this stuff done, but not really. I mean, if we can get the legislature people to do what they need to do, then it doesn't cost us a thing because we're already paying for it.
Sure.
They just need to take them tax dollars and use them wisely.
Right.
In the areas that we need it.
Well, until we have some people talking to those guys, and that doesn't happen. So what can me as an individual, Dominic as somebody, what can Dominic do to help you in what you guys are trying to do as far as a voice goes?
He can call these legislatures. I write letters to the editor. Some of you have seen some of that kind of stuff, but call that number. Call these people. Say, hey, look, I heard Richard and Ed talking the other day,
right?
And I want something done about this.
Sure.
And so you're a voter. You have a voice. Mental health people don't have a voice.
Right.
Majority of them people can't vote or don't vote.
Sure.
And so why not for the rest of the community speak up for them? A person without a voice.
Well, what is the name of the nonprofit that you guys?
Alabama Mental Health Coalition. Then I have to think about that.
Okay. Well, we can put some more information.
Yeah, we'll put that out.
The biggest thing is, what I see is you're obviously a thought leader in this, you and your wife and the person backing that with Rachel. So if that's the case, they're going to want to come to you for information. I've been pushing Ed for about a month and a half now to work on a podcast or a blog or something of that nature that we can push out there. But how do they contact you? Do they hit you on Facebook? I mean, what's the best way to reach out to you to learn more about the resources for mental health, to learn more about contributing to the solution for this?
They can a lot of people hit me on Facebook.
With his 4 a.m. thoughts, right?
Yeah, 4 a.m. thoughts. Yeah, sometimes. They can call me at the sheriff's office. That number, for my cell number is 736-3493, and that's my cell. That's the best way to get in touch with me.
Perfect. So I wanted to hit those things. I know they're important. We're coming up. We've got about a minute left overall. Is there anything else that you want to say? Any shout outs you want to give? Anything that you want to impress upon our audience of 7 people?
What I want to say is give us that voice. Not necessarily your money, but contact your local people, because they're the ones that's got to do it. No matter how much money we put into this project or something, we've got to have that voice. We've got to have these leaders in the community saying, hey, we want to do something about mental health.
Absolutely.
And so if we can get 7 people, then we get 25 people, and then we get 100 people.
Absolutely.
And how about if we got 7,000 in the community?
How powerful would that be?
Yes.
Absolutely.
And so do you think the politicians and the legislation people is going to listen to 7,000 or 89,000 or 90,000?
I would think so. And the great part about that is you've been doing this your entire life of stepping up for the community, serving in that way. And I'm proud that I'm a mentee. You're one of my mentors. We can go more into hiking and stuff like that on another episode, but I really appreciate you coming on. Dominic, speaking of finding your voice, I think this is the quietest I've ever heard you. I guess it's the stimulating conversation, huh?
I'm just fascinated by it all. Just thinking about different things. I wish we had a little bit more time in the radio segment to ask a few questions that I have on it all, but we're up against the break.
Yeah, so I'll let you sign us off on that piece, and then we'll come back on the YouTube channel, ask a few more questions, and finish up. So if you want to sign us off with how they can find us and all that stuff.
Yeah. All you people on the radio world, please look us up on YouTube. It's the Richard Neese Podcast. When you find us, like, subscribe, hit the notification. We're here to truly help good people get to a better place, help us grow so that we can help more people grow in their all journey.
All right. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. We appreciate it. And we hope that you check us out on the YouTube session and also WKUL at 9:30 a.m. on Saturday. Hey everybody, Richard Neese here. Thank you guys so much for tuning back in to our YouTube channel. I guess it's the show after the show, the run over. I mean, what do we call this? My cup runneth over. What do you think, Don?
None of those strike.
I mean, you figure that out. I'm not real good with words. So
I mean, words hard.
That's right.
Word hard.
Word hard. So we've got Captain Ed Potter from the Sheriff's Office, also a man of many hats and talents. Thank you for hanging out with us for a few more minutes. I know Dominic wanted to talk a little bit about some questions he had and things like that, so I'm going to pitch it over to him and let him kind of talk.
So yeah, when you're working in this, and I've always been fascinated with this world in psychology and mental health. You know, I may have read a book or two, so I'm quite the expert. But what do you think is like the root cause? Because I truly look around and I see the mental health of society, especially here in the United States. It seems like it's at the lowest point that you could ever see, as far as like you can really see. For me, you could actually almost see it on people, just a matter of the way they present themselves, the way they look, the way they carry themselves. You can tell that these people are still trying to find their way, and that a lot of it is some mental instability. You said 1 out of 5 people. I feel like it's more than that. I'm sure you might agree with that.
Yes, I do, because you're not going to find all the numbers. That's like 1 in 3 ladies and 4 out of 10 men are in domestics. So there's a lot of people that we don't know about. So there's a lot of undiagnosed people out there that's having problems in their life, and they can't figure out what's my problem. So that's the thing, is that, and I think it's more prevalent since they're out and about so much more so than we're not getting them help. You know, like I said, they closed down all the mental hospitals, and the politicians has pushed the mental health people onto the criminal justice side. In other words, they swapped the dollar. Hey, I don't have to pay for a mental hospital. Well, we'll just let law enforcement put them in jail and prisons and things like that. So we're just moving the dollar from the state to the local level to the county jail. Sure. And state prison. A lot of people in our county jails have mental problems.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And so that the politicians has just moved the dollar to the county residents instead of the state.
Captain, I mean, what I see consistently, and I'm always going to go back to this, is the breakdown of the family unit. I feel like I'm a Fox News analyst or something like that talking about that piece. But the breakdown of the family unit, what I see on a regular basis is mom is worried about TikTok or her views or whatever. Dad's worried about playing video games or going out and doing something for hours at a time. Well, I mean, and what I see so many kids that are raised by their tablet. They're raised by something of that nature. So it really bothers me to see that we're not teaching our kids how to deal with adversity. We're not talking about our emotions. And I'm the world's worst. Like I grew up on those video games because I didn't have a father figure that was connecting with me in that way. And so I feel that on a personal level, where you start breaking down, my kids never learn about emotional stability. They never learn about any emotional toughness. And at that point, we start going, well, I feel weird now because I've had my heart hurt a little bit. And so I'm going to self-medicate, or I'm going to go to a doctor who is just as bad and is going to give me whatever kind of medication that is going to pad his pocketbook. And what are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think we need to teach parenting because a lot of dads do go home and they sit on the video games.
Yeah.
And, so a lot of parents, not everyone, but, we have a lot of parents that are involved in TikTok and social media stuff, and they don't spend time with the kids. So I believe the family unit is the problem, but we have to talk about it.
Yeah.
And get it out there. And they'll say, oh, yes, my husband or my dad, sure, that's all he does. So why not put this out there that this is the issues that we have and educate the public?
Absolutely.
So anytime we can educate the public, if you don't know that, if you're driving down the road in a stop sign and you don't know the law, hey, I should stop here, then we should we got to educate this person to say, hey, yes, you got to stop on the stop sign. So that's the thing. We got to educate people on the issues that we see today.
What did I see on that too, though? I mean, you want to educate. You also have a little bit of calling out too, right? So I don't know if you do this, Dominic. I'm bad about this. If I'm engaged in something on my phone, I get pretty frustrated. My wife tells me, hey, pay attention to me. And it's the same way the other way. So if I'm hanging out in this family time, it's the same way the other way, though, right? So when I want to have family time and my wife's engaged in something else, I'm like, hey, look at me, pay attention to me. Why are you always on your phone? And that can create controversy too. I mean, it can create conflict within your own family. But realizing, and Capt and I do a pretty good job of this, hey, neither of us should be on our phone right now. Yes. We should be hanging out with our kids.
Exactly.
But how many people are self-aware of that? Dominic, what do you think about that as far as being in kind of my generation? Because I doubt that you and Grace sit there and look at your phone for hours on end. Well, you probably have a little bit more conversation than we do. So,
well, we always have people calling us, her clients and stuff like that. But I started leaving my phone in the car.
Yeah.
I
was worried about that. I called you like 17 times.
I figured that. But it was in the car.
Sure.
But sometimes in self-care, that's something that we need to look at too, our self-care. Yeah. Are we taking care of ourselves like we should? And are we doing enough to do that? Sure. Like, I'm out trying to hike with you a little bit.
Sure.
I'm 60.
I don't know if that's self-care or not, Capt. That might have been a little masochism there, sir.
Well, I don't know, but that was the first time I ever done that. Sure. So, you give me an opportunity to do that. And I think more people need more opportunities to say, hey, look, why don't we go up hiking? Sure. Stuff like that. And so that was my first experience. I liked it. It was a little tough on me. You realize that. But I made it.
Absolutely.
And so that's the key, is that you go out and you set goals for yourself, where it's walking, running, and you meet them goals. And then you just keep going. But you have to figure out what's important in your life. I had a thing on Facebook the other day. It was like Facebook and video games and stuff like that. And it was kind of like a grown guy, and it was on a wheel.
Yeah.
Sitting there doing that. So we have to figure out how much time we want to allot to certain things.
Sure.
And how much credence we want to give to what's going on around us.
Yeah.
So, we have to kind of split up our time and decide on what's important for us. But if you don't take care of yourself, how are you going to take care of anybody else?
That's right.
Mentally, physically, emotionally.
Yeah. But Dom, do you feel that within your relationship or within your family, where it's almost like you're taking away my toy for a little bit, and now I'm taking away your toy? Because I'm just being very transparent. I doubt my wife listens to this anyway. She'll listen to this part, I'm sure. But that's the way I feel.
I'll make it a clip out of it.
Thank you so much, Tom.
No,
team player.
I guess for me, I kind of have, like, for me, I'm not going to go and beat around the bush and be a hypocrite here. I am, I'm a super nerd, and I do enjoy video games more than I should. But I made a rule, a self-imposed rule years and years ago, was it don't turn on until the kids are in bed.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because I'm a little bit of a night owl. My wife likes to go to bed early, so there's her point in the day where it's like nothing's really going on. But she's there and I'm wide awake, so it's either get some extra work done, watch a movie, or just play some games. So I might take advantage of that time a little bit. I also I try not to have it where the only memory my kids have of me is,
that's right,
on my off time, is playing games. Now, have I played while they were up? Yeah, I had from time to time, but I also saw that as something, as that it's not an image that I want to impress in my children's mind. That's all daddy does.
Yeah. And some parents live, but how about self-care? Isn't that your self-care?
And I would argue that too. Yeah, that's what I was
because some people read books, some people watch movies, some people play games,
some people go hunting, and that's where you start getting into that, putting boundaries on it. And I think that's important. Mm-hmm. How many dads, let's say 20 years ago, went out hunting and you basically didn't see them all hunting season? To me, there's no difference between that and sitting behind a video game.
Right.
But when you start adding in your kids, even to the video game, when you add in your kids, they're like me and the kids have played Tomb Raider, and we played things like that challenge their mind, but there's a few bad words on there, but aren't too bad. You start looking at that stuff, they engage with me on that, but we know when to put that down. Whereas if I just came home and played Call of Duty the whole time, as soon as I walked in the door, the kids heard some of the language on there, stuff like that, to me, I mean, you can get to borderline abuse if you're doing that.
And fun, quick little side note on that right there is that when you're actually playing Call of Duty, the language that the characters use in the game is pretty foul. But yet, if you start using foul language over the
that's exactly
reported.
Yeah,
I'm just like, rules for thee, but not for me. Rules for me, but not for thee.
I think that's an important thing that you said, though, Captain, is what is self-care. So my wife knows that there's a few things that I need. If I have a stressful day, I'll come home. I love on the kids for a minute, but occasionally I'll play 20 minutes. Like I've got a casino game. I like playing blackjack and craps. I've got a football game. I'll play NCAA football, but I'm not playing it for 4 hours. And she knows that when I do that, it's probably going to take about 30, 45 minutes. And then I can free up. I'm released some stress. Other things I've done before, obviously not as healthy as that, is drink some bourbon. I've done smoke some cigars. I mean, there's lots of ways that we should replace those things, but there are ways that you can de-stress. And I know you kind of had an experience with that. Was it vaping? That the wife was like, "Here's your vape." I'm tired of you being so grumpy.
Yeah, on the second
we might start my wives here.
Yeah. This is way different. On third COVID, because you don't get it once, you get them. The third time I had it, I was down for about a week or so, and I just been smoking since I was probably 17, and so I didn't have any vape or any nicotine during that time. So I'm like, well, why pick it up? Why pick it back up again?
Yeah.
So I took everything, threw it all in the trash, and then I started getting, within the next few weeks, just started getting so much anxiety to where I was feeling like I was having a heart attack. Everything just started coming down on me. I felt emotional to the point where things would make me physically start tear up. And it was like, and I wasn't craving nicotine during this whole time, but I was very, very unstable as a person. And just would check out from time to time. And after about a week or two of this, my wife goes back to the store and used to smoke cigars. She gave me a pack of cigars. She's like, "I want you back." Handed that back to me. And so after that, we were like, okay. So I was like, there's more going on than this being a nicotine addiction. I was like, this is something I have to use to cope with. So we have to figure out this underlying issue, get to the root of it all. And since then, I have been working with people in the mental health industry in order to address those issues. So
it's an interesting story.
Yeah,
I thought that was relevant in what we're talking about.
It is.
We all deal with things differently.
We do, and everybody's a little different. But why should it be bad? Why should it be bad to talk to a counselor? Sure, let's get away from the stigma.
exactly.
That hey, this guy's going to see a counselor. Is there something is he crazy? Crazy is not mental illness.
Yeah.
So we want to interchange the two, but why not say it's okay to go to see a mental health counselor?
Yeah.
And why instead of saying, "Oh, something's wrong with him."
And I think
let's stop that stigmatism.
And I think it came from a lot of old macho wisdoms of be a man, suck it up.
Yeah, give it.
Yeah, that you gotta tough it out. You're just weak as a person and things like that, and don't realize that there's actually something wrong in your life that needs to be addressed, whether it's something psychologically. And I find that a lot of these cases, it's actually poor diets that contribute to a lot of these issues. That when you start taking the wrong chemicals, especially sugars. Sugars is so. I'm sure you could attest to that, how bad sugars are for your mentality. So when I cut out sugars, I started feeling a lot better about myself too.
So I think you were just in my head, Dominic. I think I heard everything that I've told myself over and over again as far as counseling and stuff like that. So I will say that I've never been to counseling. Anybody that feels that they need that, I understand. But what you're talking about is exactly what goes to my head on a regular basis is I don't need to let all my secrets out to someone, or I don't need this or that. And so those things go through my mind. And I'm not telling you to convert me, Captain, by any means. So we all have our own way of dealing with things. But I guess for me, I try and look at it from a stoic approach is everything inside of me I can tweak, control, do something like, and it may be illogical, it may be fallible overall, but that's the mindset that I have is I can understand myself as an experiment, and then I've done some things where you change something slightly, just like the process, the scientific process. All right, this made me feel a certain way, so I'm going to move towards that. but I know there is some fallacy in that thinking as well.
Yeah, but coping, it gives you coping skills. Not everybody's strong-minded. Sure. And sometimes things happen in their life, and we don't want people to know.
Right.
And, we go to a counselor, and if they're doing the right thing, you'll never hear about it because you sign a confidentiality thing with them, and they can't, if they go out and say, oh, Richard's done this, Richard's done that, then they're in trouble.
Okay. I work in real estate, and I know the contracts don't matter much. But yes, I agree. In the medical field, it's definitely different.
But we got to get away from the stigma that talking to counselors stuff are bad. Sure, mental health is bad. No, we need to get it out there in the open so we can talk about our issues. Not in open as far as your issues, but, if there's something inside here that's saying, hey, I need to talk to somebody. And talk therapy, it works. Sure. And some people, it takes more. Right. Some
shock therapy. Yeah.
Well, I don't know about shock. Well, then there is stuff out there for like that kind of stuff. They're trying to get away.
That was all a joke.
But if you get it, it's the way I talk to people is, hey, you got a ball in here. If you don't take care of it, it just keeps bigger and bigger, and it's going to explode at some point in time. But if you get it up from here, out here somewhere, then that will help. Sure. Whether it's talking to a counselor, journaling is a good thing. So, so there's different things for different people, what they enjoy.
Something else, and again, I'm assuming you're not Catholic, correct?
No.
As a Catholic, for me, I'm sure people make jokes about going to the priest's confession for things like that. That's one of those things for me when you actually do go to confession, that there's a certain weight that gets lifted off your shoulder just through that right there by speaking it out to somebody and saying, hey, this is an issue. This is, this is something that I did that was wrong and I'm admitting guilt to it. Therapeutically, it takes it does off of you just opening the mouth and coming out. But I said I'm not Catholic, but if these priests had a little bit of mental counseling in them, say, well, son, and I don't know what they say, but how about if you try this or give you some options or coping? There's the good ones usually do. You got the ones that have just got out of the school. Well, no, you get the ones that just got out of the session with the 80-year-old grandma who decides to retell every single sin of her lifetime, those 30, 45-minute confessions. And so they're a little wore out from that conversation. But a lot of times when you come across a priest who really does, I don't want to say not that y'all don't care, but whenever they take the time to address things, a lot of times they will give you advice, curriculum, prayer cards, and resources to go and do those things. So that does exist with that. It's just not as often. And again, the churches or the confessions that I generally go to is more traditionally based because the shrine at Hansville.
Yes.
So they tend to put more effort into that and don't just go through motions.
Sure. Yeah. Well, in any job,
I agree.
Whether you're a real estate person or police officer, you have to put knowledge and care into it, and you'll know those that come along and does that kind of stuff. So I think that's the kind of people we want to be, to try to be out there to help people and guide them in the right direction.
Absolutely. I think that the after the show session has been just as good and valuable as the actual show during the radio, the first 30 minutes. I appreciate you coming on, Captain. We're going to have to cut it short just a little bit. I think we could probably talk for 2 or 3 hours, and we've about done that before. Dominic, is there anything else you wanted to end with? And I'll let Captain have the last word.
No, I'm good.
Yeah. Anything else you want to say to the folks on YouTube?
If there's 90,000 people in our county, why aren't 90,000 people calling our legislature people and say, hey, we want help for our people, for our brothers, sisters, sons, daughters with their mental illness, and we want something. We need places to put.
Absolutely, unified voice, right?
Yes, a unified voice. So if 90,000 people in this county would speak up and say, hey, we're not going to vote for you if you don't do something.
Yeah, we can get something done for sure. Well, Captain, thank you for coming on. Dominic, thank you for making all the social media stuff happen. Like usual, I'll let you sign off and then we'll be done.
Man, you put me on the spot again. Have a great night, guys.